Hello everyone. Good morning. Welcome back to Sunday School. I hope that you all are having a fantastic day and that you've had a great week. It's finally starting to feel like spring and summer outside. It's beautiful, and I hope that you've had lots of opportunities to enjoy the beautiful weather that God's giving us. I know I have been loving being outside lately. Let's go ahead and get started with class today. I am very sorry I forgot to send your papers out last week, so this week in the mail you should have received this week's papers for week number 5, as well as last week's papers for week number 4. So this week's papers, just so you know, they will have a number 5 on them right up here. Okay, so just so you know which one it is, it's this paper and this paper. They're the ones for this week's lesson, and the other two are for last week's lesson. So I'm so sorry that I got those out to you late, but hopefully you got all your papers and can do the activities and study your verses and do everything you need to do now that you have both of the papers there. All right, let's go ahead and get started with our memory verses. We're going to do all of them here, but of course, we already know these, right? I know Miss Shika, she took a video of herself saying all of these verses, and she did a fantastic job. So I hope that you all are learning them and practicing just as much as she is. She did such a good job. All right, let's go ahead and get started with Genesis 1:1. Ready? Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Genesis 1:1. I messed up there. Let's do that one more time. Ready? Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Genesis 1:1. All right. Our second verse is John 3:16. Ready? John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. John 3:16. Okay, our third verse. I think you all are still keeping up, right? You're saying these as we say them out loud, right? Romans 3:23. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Romans 3:23. And then our most recent verse here is Proverbs 3:5. Okay? Ready? Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. Proverbs 3:5. Very soon we're going to add on another verse, and that'll be the last verse that we learn for the spring quarter. So we're almost all finished with our verses. Let's go ahead and say Proverbs 3:5 all together one more time to make sure it's really in our memory, okay? Ready? Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. And that's Proverbs 3:5. Fantastic. Like I said, I hope all of you are taking just a couple minutes to make sure you memorize those verses. Those are all verses that will help you out so much, even in years and years and years to come. Okay. I hope that you remember, we've been learning about one person for the last couple of weeks, and I hope you remember who that is. It is Moses. Now, Moses is an interesting person to learn about because we start reading in the Bible about Moses when he was a tiny baby. We learn about Moses before he was even born, and then we learn about Moses all the way through his life, and he had a very interesting life. We talked about the fact that when he was a tiny baby, the Pharaoh at the time there in Egypt, he did not love God's people. He was afraid that God's people would try to take away his power. So he said that all of the baby boys needed to be killed. It was terrible. And of course, Moses' mom was not willing to do that. She sent Moses down the river in the basket. The princess, right, the Pharaoh's daughter, is the one who found Moses, raised him. And then we learned last week about how Moses made a huge mistake and let his anger win. Instead of thinking and doing what was right, he let his anger control how he acted, and he killed a man who was behaving badly. So that was a terrible thing to do. And then Moses ran away from the palace. He left the life he had in Egypt, and he went and lived out in the wilderness, and there he was a shepherd. Well, this week we're going to learn about what happened after Moses was called by God to go back to Egypt to rescue the people. Now remember, last week we learned about the burning bush, and that's how God got Moses' attention. Sometimes God needs to use things to get our attention. Sometimes something bad or something good will happen, and it'll make us stop and think, wait a second, am I thinking about God? Am I doing what's right? And that's kind of what happened here with the burning bush and Moses. God needed to use that bush to actually get Moses' attention. So So God finally had Moses' attention. He told him that Moses was the person that God wanted to go back and rescue the people, God's people, from Egypt. Well, of course, Moses was very nervous about this, but he finally agreed to obey God, to do what was right, to go back to Egypt to rescue God's people. Now he prepared to leave his life as a shepherd and go back to do what God had told him to do. Now, he was going to have the help of his brother. I don't know if any of you will remember this, but we learned about Moses' brother way back in the first lesson about Moses. His name was, do you know? Aaron. I hope that some of you knew that maybe at home. Aaron was Moses' older brother. He was just a few years older, about 3 years older. And Moses had not seen him in 40 years. 40 years is a long time. Now, Moses was so excited to go back and see his brother, but he was very nervous because he knew that God had given him a big job to do. But does God give us jobs that we can't handle? No way. Anytime God wants us to do something, we know that that means that God's going to make it so that we have the power and ability to do that. Now, Moses and Aaron went before Pharaoh, not the same Pharaoh as when Moses was a baby. This was a different one now. He went before Pharaoh and told Pharaoh what God had said. They told Pharaoh how important it was that God's people be allowed to worship God. Just like we need to be allowed to pray and to go to church when it's safe to do that, we need to be allowed to do all of those things, right? Well, Moses and Aaron told Pharaoh that it was very important that God's people be allowed to go and worship God. They had a special 3-day worship feast that they did that right now Pharaoh wasn't letting them do. Well, Pharaoh was very upset when Moses and Aaron asked him to let the people go worship God for 3 days. Do you know why he was upset? He wanted the people to work. He did not want to give them a break. He did not want to let them worship God. He just wanted them to make more things so he would make more money. It wasn't very nice. Well, after Moses and Aaron talked to Pharaoh, Pharaoh decided to be even meaner and more hard on the Hebrew people, on God's people. Instead of giving them the supplies that they needed to do their work, instead he told them, you know what, go make bricks, but I'm not going to give you the supplies. I'm not going to give you the straw that you use to make those bricks. You have to find that yourself. Oh, and now you have to make even more. He was not being fair. He was not being kind. He was not doing what was right. And you know what? It made the Hebrew people, God's people, very upset at Moses. He said, Moses and Aaron, you were supposed to come here to rescue us, to take us away from this. And instead it's even harder, more difficult. We wish that you had never even come to talk to Pharaoh. You know what? Moses, I think, was very discouraged. When you're discouraged, that means that you're sad, you're disappointed, and you feel just really let down. Maybe some of you have felt that way sometimes, right? Sometimes we just get discouraged. We think that things are not working out the right way, or we think that God doesn't understand us. But God talked to Moses, and God assured Moses that God had sent Moses there to do a job, and God was going to help Moses to do that job. Like I said before, God doesn't tell us to do something unless he makes us able to do that thing. So if God tells you to be a nice person to somebody, to be a friend to somebody, you know what? God's going to give you the ability to do that, right? Well, Moses believed what God said, but of course he still needed to talk to Pharaoh. He still needed to get the Hebrew people free from slavery. So Moses and Aaron went back before Pharaoh. This was very brave of them, right? Because Pharaoh did not like them. Pharaoh did not want to hear what they had to say. Moses and Aaron went back before Pharaoh and they said, listen, God is telling us to do something. We need to obey God. God gave Aaron the ability to do something that was a miracle. Aaron was holding a stick, a big long stick that they called a staff. Sometimes people would use them as kind of a cane or a support. Well, Aaron was holding his staff and he threw it down on the ground and it turned into a snake. Now, if you have a stick somewhere and you pick it up and you throw it on the ground, what's going to happen? It's going to still be a stick, right? It's not going to turn into an animal, especially not a snake, right? Well, this stick turned into a snake because God made it into a snake. Well, Pharaoh was impressed, but he also thought, you know what? I have some magicians. and I can have them come in and do the same thing, and that'll show Moses and Aaron that that wasn't a trick from God. It wasn't a miracle. It was just a magic trick. So Pharaoh had his magicians come in, and they threw down sticks, and guess what? They used horrible, dirty magic that made those sticks turn into snakes too. Well, there were a whole lot of snakes here on the floor, but guess what happened? Is God the same as magic? No. We know that when God does a miracle, it's not the same thing as a magic trick. A miracle is something that only God can do. Well, the stick that Aaron had thrown down that turned into a snake, that snake swallowed up all of the other snakes from the magicians. Pharaoh then knew, wait a second, this isn't the same as just a magic trick. God is saying something through these people. Now, next week we're going to learn about what happened, because Pharaoh was a very stubborn person. When you're stubborn, it means you're not willing to change your mind. You're not willing to listen to other people. Pharaoh was a stubborn person and not willing to listen to God or to Moses or Aaron, who were God's representatives there, right? We're going to learn about that next week, and I really hope that you guys have been enjoying learning about Moses. He's a very interesting person to learn about, and we'll talk about him more some next week. If you have any questions, or if there's anything that I can help you with or Mrs. Boyd can help you with, please feel free to reach out. Your parents or your adult who you're with, they all should have our contact information. And if there's anything we can help you with, just let us know, okay? We love you. We are very, very excited to see you hopefully soon. And until next week, we will learn about Moses some more. All right. Have a good night. Bye-bye now.